Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves in their short lifetime so far. And the last beer that I reviewed from these guys was a couple of months ago, if memory serves me correctly. But there was two that caught my eye when I was here in Osaka this time, and you'll see the other one appearing in a couple of videos time, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But this particular beer is a style that I haven't tried from this brewery yet. It's a style though that I very much enjoy, and it is a little bit stronger than the last one we tried from them. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to head a little bit to the south of me here in Osaka, down to Shikoku Island, which is the smallest of the four main Japanese islands. We're going to go to Ehime Prefecture, which is in the kind of northwestish part of the island, and we're going to go to Matsuyama City. And that means that we're going to have a look at my second beer from DD4D Brewing. So this particular beer is called Diamond in the Rough. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a West Coast double IPA. So yeah, this is yet another beer that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Emaichi here in Osaka. A lovely little shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika. Rika does most of the work these days, I think, because Koji is a little bit older. But yeah, they've always got a great selection of Japanese beers, and they're bringing in stuff from all over the country, which is really great to see. That's pretty much where I get all of my beers when I'm here in Japan, or 90% of the Japanese craft beer that I review for you here is from Liquor Shop Asahiya. So check out the link to their Facebook page in the video description below. You'll see all the stuff that they're getting in, and do go and pay them a visit if you find yourself here in Osaka. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. The Diamond in the Rough, an 8% West Coast Double IPA from DD4D Brewing in Matsuyama City in Ehime Prefecture here in Japan. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from DD4D Brewing before, and we will be adding another one to that list very soon, and I'm sure more beyond that as time goes on. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. So yeah, some really interesting stuff on the channel these days, so I do recommend that you have a little look at that. But let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about DD4D Brewing once again then. So DD4D Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Matsuyama City in Ehime Prefecture on Shikoku Island, and the brewery was founded back in 2019. So the main man behind the company is Keita Yamanouchi, and his first experience of craft beer and brewing was during a trip to Canada in his university days, and he actually started home brewing for himself back in 2016. But the history of the DD4D brand goes back to 1998, when his family opened a clothing store in the San Bunecho area of the city. But apparently they're very selective about what brands they take into the store, and they want to focus on the message and the worldview of the designer. So the clothing store was actually Keita's parents' business, and he took over and looked after the shop, but his interest in beer was still extremely strong, and he wanted to start a brewery, and so he formed a parent company called Japandemic. And the company officially started brewing beer in 2019, and the original brewery can be found behind the clothing store space, where they also have a little bar where you can try some of these beers on tap. Again, this sounds like another place where we need to go and actually have a little look at doing an out and about video, because this is one of the more random ones that you're going to find. In Japan, you'll find breweries starting up in furniture shops and just really random things like this. So we need to go and check out this clothes shop slash brewery at some stage. So keep your eyes peeled for that out and about video in the future. But anyway, fast forward to November 2021. They opened a new brewery in the Matsuyama area of the city, and this facility is known as DD4D Factory and Curiosities. But it was at this point that they started canning their beer and getting it further afield, and the brewing equipment in there comes from PSS in Slovakia, and they started off with a fermentation capacity of 9,600 litres. They've got an on-site bar there as well, which opens in the weekends from spring to autumn. And as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 210 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. They are pretty prolific. From what I've seen, Koji and Rika seem to be getting new beers from them very, very often, every couple of weeks. So that is great to see. And these guys have proved to be really quite popular, actually. The standard of craft beer in Japan has been on the up for the last 2 years. I think in the last kind of 2-3 years it seems to have really exploded a little bit with the likes of Uchu and West Coast Brewing and things like this. So lots of breweries to check out here in Japan these days, so make sure you do. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about DD4D Brewing for the moment. One of the new guys on the block, but very much up and coming and very well respected at the moment. So check out the links in the video description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and the brewery website will keep you up to date. And they've got quite a nice merchandise section in there. You can buy the clothes from the shop and things like this too. But remember the parent company name, Japandemic. I think it's easier to find the brewery through that. But yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So yeah, diamond in the rough. As we mentioned earlier, you can see the number 4 is made out to be like a diamond, which I think is quite cool. This can is 350 millilitres, which is quite common for smaller cans in Japan. You can see the top of the can there. The DD4D Brewing symbols, you can see the one at the top of the can there. If it'll focus. You see it's like fermentation vessels, and then they've got another one down here. There you go. I'm not sure how well that's going to focus, but yeah. My hand's a little bit shaky because I'm quite tired. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, this one comes in at 8% ABV. It's supposed to be a West Coast double IPA, this one. It's hopped with Citra, Centennial and Simcoe, all hops that we know quite well, so it's an all-American hop bill. Citra is about 14% alpha acid, and a West Coast IPA it's going to give you a big oily mango, a little bit of passion fruit and grapefruit as well, but also some nice really lemon, limey and kind of like lychee and gooseberry type notes. Centennial is about 12% alpha acid, going to give you a big zesty oily lemon character in a West Coast IPA, and then Simcoe is going to give you this lovely kind of oily passion fruity character, 12% alpha acid, and American once again. But the malt base in this one apparently is just carapils and pilsner malts, so this should be quite interesting actually. I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. But yeah, let's get it out into the glass and see what it has in store for us. I'm really curious about this one. Oh, it got a little bit excited. A little bit of foam there, but yeah, it should be alright. There we go. But yeah, I have noticed that West Coast IPAs have been making more and more appearances again over the last kind of year or two, and I'm really happy about that because I love the old school West Coast IPAs. I missed them for quite a long time during the haze craze, and yeah, the hazies are good. I do enjoy a good hazy IPA, but it's nice to have a bit of variety. I think I was missing the black IPAs and I was missing the West Coasters, so this is one that I really wanted to try because I did enjoy the last beer I had from these guys. But yeah, you can see anyway, this beer, the can did feel a little bit pressured, to be honest. But yeah, you can see that this beer is poured with about 2 fingers of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. You can see it's got quite, small bubbles just on the surface of the liquid there, and they seem to get bigger and bigger the further up the head that you go. But I'll just let you have a little look at the head there. It looks very, very nice. So in terms of the colour of this is one of the lighter West Coast IPAs that I've seen. It's pretty much like a kind of pale golden straw colour, to be honest with you. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But when it comes to IPAs, you don't often have to care about that. These beers are ones that you should drink fresh to get all the nice kind of hoppy flavours out of. So yeah, this one definitely one of the lighter looking West Coast IPAs that I've come across. But if it's Carapils and Pilsner malt that are in here, that to me kind of makes sense. The colour of this one really does make sense. So yeah, you've got a lovely kind of little bit of a natural haze to it, but it's a pretty clear beer. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation. But yeah, I think it looks pretty nice, this one, and I think yeah, just definitely one of the lighter ones. I'm curious to see how this is going to be. I wonder if it's going to be quite similar to the German brewed and European brewed West Coast IPAs that I've been having in recent times, because you can taste the difference between the American malts, which are a bit more kind of like chewy and oily, and the European malts, which are a little bit more kind of crisp and things like that. You know, the classic American malt for West Coast IPAs are the different types of two-row, whereas in Europe, Crystal is the popular one. But yeah, enough about that. We've said enough about the appearance and things. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and just see what this one is going to have in store for us. And of course, you can see my little boy's IKEA kitchen behind me, which is always a feature in the videos here in Japan. But yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty nice actually. I do really like how this one comes across. It's actually quite sweet. Yeah, it's not too aggressive in its green component and things either. It's actually a very kind of mild-mannered beer in terms of its aroma. So when it comes to the West Coast IPAs, the key differences between these and the New Englands, when it comes to the malt base, West Coast IPAs tend to be majority barley malt. New England IPAs use a little bit of wheat and a little bit of oat as well. New England IPAs are nowhere near as bitter as West Coast IPAs, although that said, there are a number of breweries these days who have taken the bitterness of the West Coast IPAs down. So I'm quite curious to see how bitter this one's going to be. I have heard that this one's got quite a little bit of bitterness to it, like at least 80 IBUs, and I'm hoping that that's true. I do like a bit of bitterness in the West Coast IPAs. But yeah, this one, the aroma, this is quite nice. And for me, with the West Coast IPAs, there are two ways they can lean. They can be a little bit more kind of bready and biscuity, such as the Russian River Pliny the Elder, or they can be a little bit more kind of oily and caramelly and things, such as the Sierra Nevada Torpedo. Those are the two kind of benchmarks of the West Coast IPA for me. And this one smells as if it's going to be a bit more bready and biscuity, but the more that I smell of it, the more oily and sweet it seems to get. So yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty interesting. Yeah, I like that. But yeah, let's break it down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth then before we try it. So the backbone of this beer, it's got a lovely little bit of that kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. That's absolutely forming the backbone of the beer. So yeah, fresh brown bready bread crust in there. There's a little bit of woodiness and things like that to it as well, but that's quite minimal. I'm getting a lot of kind of sweet wholemeal brown bread, some white bready character as well. Yeah, some wholemeal brown bready character in there, white bread above that too. I'm interested in this malt base because it's quite, I do wonder if there's a little bit of two-row in there as well. I would be very curious to see the malt base because it has a little bit of that chewy American note to it, but you can also smell the more crisp European side of things. But I'm not really getting much in the way of like the kind of crispness you'd expect of the Pilsner malt. That's interesting. So yeah, sweet brown bread, white bread. There's a sweeter caramel in there, definitely. I'm getting a bit of Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotch coming out of this one. Reminds me a little bit of Maris Otter. You know, honestly, thinking about English malt as well. This one, the aroma that I'm getting from the malt base in this really reminds me of Maris Otter. So there's a bit of sweet caramel in there. There's a bit of Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch and a wee bit of McVitie's Digestive Biscuit as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together on the malty side of things is quite interesting. It's got a little bit of English IPA character to it, which I do like. Yeah, it's interesting. Not quite what I expected, to be honest, but yeah, I always enjoy a little bit of Maris Otter in beers, so I'd be very curious to know if I was right about that. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, now, like I said earlier, the green component in this beer isn't too aggressive in its pungency and things like that. There's a little bit of earthiness. There's a little bit of a herbal character in there as well. And I mean, out of these hops, what is it, Citra, Simcoe and Centennial, none of them are overly earthy or herbal or whatever, but yeah, the green component in this one actually comes across as being quite wet. You do have some floral aromaticity in there, some nice grassiness. I think out of the three hops in this one, it's probably Centennial that's showing you the most of the green component. The thing we have to remember with IPAs as well is that there are three types of hoppings that you can do with these beers. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place during the first hour of the wort boil usually. That gives you the kind of deeper, danker flavour and aroma. More bitterness, of course. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the last half hour of the wort boil. That gives you mainly flavour and aroma, and it gives you a brighter green component in the aroma. And then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That gives you all flavour and aroma, and again, it's quite bright, the green component in that case. West Coast IPAs tend to use all three types of hoppings, whereas New England IPAs rely majorly, or mostly I should say, on late addition and dry hopping. Now, usually when you've got quite an aggressive and big green component in the aroma, that's usually an indicator of the early addition hopping, the deep dank notes. But as I say, this beer's quite mild mannered from that perspective. The green component's quite kind of takes a back seat. So yeah, earthiness, herbal, floral, and grassy. The way that this beer goes together, I think, is really nice. On the fruity side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect, actually. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of everything. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything in there. It's giving you a little bit of a kind of, I'm getting the oily passion fruit, which I would expect at the Simcoe, and you know, citrus going to come into that as well. There's oily, nice big oily mango, a little bit of pineapple as well actually, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm getting quite a lot of that kind of lemony zest that you would expect of the Centennial, and I'm curious with this one whether Centennial is sticking out to me, because not all that many beers are using Centennial, although hops come in peaks and troughs. I've noticed Centennial has been coming back into things a little bit more when it had disappeared for a few years. Equinaut is another one that seems to be coming back as well. But yeah, lemony citrus, I'm getting a wee bit of that gooseberry lychee type thing that you can get from Citra as well in the West Coast IPAs. And it's usually, as I say, you know, hops will behave differently with different malts. Simcoe, if you put it in a black IPA, gives you beautiful red fruity qualities. But yeah, the fruit character of this one, it's very oily. It comes across very oily in that regard. As I say, passion fruit, mango, oily pineapple, wee bit of gooseberry, bit of lychee, and then yeah, you've got a wee kind of lemon limey kind of character coming out of this one too. So I really do like how that goes together. So aroma wise, this is nice. As I always say, take a bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think we should have a taste of this one now and see what it's all about. So yeah, this is the Diamond in the Rough, an 8% West Coast double IPA from DD4D Brewing in Matsuyama, Ehime, Shikoku, Japan. Slanja, skål, cheers, kampai. This is interesting. I'll tell you something though. It does have a good little bit of bitterness to it, but it's a very light and very clean West Coast IPA. The bitterness really does build in this into the aftertaste. It actually reminds me, the level of drinkability that you have from this beer actually reminds me a little bit of the cold IPAs. And those are interesting beers. I've not reviewed too many of those on the channel actually. That's something that I do need to sort. I would love to review a few more cold IPAs on the channel. But this beer, it's definitely, you know, West Coast and old school West Coast, but the malty character in this one, it has a little bit of English character, but it does very much remind me, just the way the flavours kind of go together in this one, it does really remind me of the cold IPAs. So thumbs up to DD4D Brewing for this one. Something a little bit different. The other beer that we have is a hazy double IPA, and which I don't think I think we've had a hazy pale ale or something from these guys before, but yeah, I'm curious to see how that turns out. But this is good. So yeah, with this one, we'll break it down and describe it a bit more in depth for you, as we always do. This one actually, when I was talking about the spectrum of West Coast IPA, this one is kind of firmly in the middle. You've got a lovely bit of breadiness to it, but you also have the sweetness is just that little bit more oily. So this one kind of straddles the line. Actually, it shows you, it leans more and more toward the oily side of things, I think, the further into the flavour that you go. So that's worth bearing in mind. So yeah, in terms of the the middle third of your palate, then we'll start there as we always do. Brain's a bit slow because I'm tired. So middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you get lovely kind of, a lovely little bit of a kind of dry, very slightly toasty brown bready bread crust there. As you move further forward in that, middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness and a little bit of dryness under the toward the front of that middle third of your palate, and that's, yeah, a little bit of woodiness, I think, is a good way to describe it. But then above the above the kind of bread crusty layer, you're getting a bit of this kind of sweet wholemeal brown bready sort of character too. So the way that goes together is really quite nice. The bready character in this one, it's actually kind of quite crisp, as I say. That's one of the things. And I'm getting the it's carapils. They're saying it's carapils and Pilsner. They said Pilsen malts, which will be Czech malts in that case, because the Pilsner beer originated from the Czech city of Pilsen. But there is something tells me there is just a little bit of Maris Otter or something in here as well. I'd be very curious to know that. But yeah, you've got like fresh brown bready bread crust, like a layer of like a kind of brown bready character. Then you get a kind of crisp white bready layer, and toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you really do get some of that dry, crisp Pilsner malt type quality there as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together is really quite nice. So on top of the kind of more crisp white bready layer, you can feel there's like a little circle in the middle of your palate there, and you're starting to get the kind of brown sugary characters and the booziness out of this one. This beer does give you a little bit of warmth, actually, which is quite nice. So that circle, the base, It has a little bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity type quality. And then there's maybe a little tiny hint of like a Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch as you go further into the aftertaste. Maybe toffee is a better way to describe it. But in the dead centre of your palate, you've got that boozy caramelly note out of this one. And that's one of the things you have to say about this beer. It does feel a little bit boozy, and that's probably because of the fact that they're using a lot of lager malts in this one. Whereas if they used maybe some of the more kind of ale malts, if you like, some of the bigger oily ones, that it would just. I think it's just the fact that you've got the Pilsner crispness in there as well gives this beer, it makes it feel that little bit more boozy, but it's still very drinkable at the same time. As I say, it reminds me, the flavour profile of this reminds me of cold IPAs, which I do very much enjoy. Yeah, pardon me. So I think that's, to be honest, I would say that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate. So if we go to the back third of the palate now, as I've often said, the back third of the palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third, just at different intensities. So you've got a little border region there between middle and back third of the palate. So the brown bread, you've got a little bit of the brown, fluffy brown bread in there, then the white bread above that, which is nice. Yeah, brown bread, white bread in that border region. The base of the back third of your palate, you've got the same bread crusty notes that I was talking about, but usually on the back third of your palate the flavours will feel a bit drier. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of bread crusty, character in there. You can feel the brown bready layer, which I was talking about, which feels lighter and more airy and a little bit drier. The white bready layer in there as well, which is, it feels a little bit lighter and a wee bit more airy. And then you have you have a little bit of the kind of brown sugar just creeping over the top of that. You've got a little bit of a kind of grainy dry sort of brown sugar sitting on top of that, the biscuity ones. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. And then above that you've got some of the yeasty character too. So the yeasty side of this beer for me, the yeasty side of this beer for me is quite it's quite, you can feel it's like a little dense, you can feel there's a little bit of a dense, doughy, brown bready kind of ball in there. So dense, doughy, brown bready character. Then around that you've got a little bit of like honeycomb and things. I often get honeycomb when it comes to the yeasty side of these beers, but definitely you can feel the back third of your palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together, I would say. So yeah, the lingering flavour in this beer is that biscuity, boozy and kind of toffee caramel type flavour. So yeah, interesting stuff actually. This is quite an interesting thing. I think this is one of the lightest West Coast double IPAs that I've had, but it works. It really does work, this one. I wouldn't have thought to just use lager malts in a beer like this if I was designing a recipe, but it works. It really does work. Yeah, interesting. So onto the hoppy side of things then. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little touch of earthiness in there, but that takes a bit of a back seat. As you move further forward, you get a little bit of that deeper, danker kind of quality out of this one. As I said, this is a beer that really starts to show its bitterness a bit more the further into the aftertaste that you go. You can feel this one. It's very sweet when you first take it in, but then you get more and more bitterness out into the aftertaste. But the more you drink of it, the more it kind of mellows out. So a bit of deeper, danker, piney resin there. Some nice floral aromaticity as well. It's got a little bit of spiciness there too, which is nice. And then round the front curve of your tongue, you get a little bit of the grassiness, and it's got a wee touch of zesty character as well. So yeah, I like that with this one. So yeah, the the grassiness out of this one has a wee bit of zestiness too, and I think that's the Centennial that's doing that in this one. The Centennial is probably the one that's going to give you a wee bit of zestiness, so Citra would probably do the same. But on that front third of your palate then, you're getting, on the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there again, brown bread, then white bread, the base of the front third of your palate, bread crust again, then the sweet brown bread, the white bread, then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a little touch of grapefruit, which will be the Citra. Then as you move further forward, you're getting a big oily and juicy passion fruit, and that's probably the Simcoe. And as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate, yeah, it's a big, big oily mango, and that's the Citra. That's the Citra that's going to give you that. Maybe there's a little touch of pineapple just sitting on top of that as well. But then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's interesting because you can feel a little bit of the oily gooseberry lychee type characters from Citra, which are common when you use them with sweeter malts, or when you use Citra with sweeter malts. But you're also getting that big kind of zesty and but quite oily and still sweet lemon from the Centennial sitting on top of that, and the Citra is going to contribute to that as well, and you can feel those kind of lemony, zesty, sweeter characters just mixing in with the grassy esters too. So yeah, I do like how that pieces together. So yeah, the way that all goes together is really nice. But like I say, the flavour profile of this one does remind me of cold IPAs quite a little bit. But I like this. I certainly do like this one. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So yeah, I think at this point we can talk about the mouthfeel to round off. So like I said, it's an interesting beer, this one, because it's very clean, but it gives you this oiliness and sweetness the further into the aftertaste that you go. So it's mid-bodied. Yeah, it's mid-bodied. The carbonation is... it has a little bit of crispness to it, this one, but yeah, it's quite wet and clean and slightly oily, as I've said. In terms of IBUs with this beer, I want to say it's probably about 80. I think it is about 80. Yeah, I think it's like, yeah, it's 70 or 80 IBUs, but I think it shows you a bit more bitterness in the beginning when you take it in, but your palate, at least my palate, really adjusts to this one quite well. As we said with malt base, there's a bit of dryness underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, then you've got that big oily sweetness on top, and that really lingers into the aftertaste. The fruity side of this beer is quite oily, and it's quite well balanced between the kind of citrusy side and the more kind of tropical side as well. And the green component, as we said, gives you a little bit of floral spiciness and a wee bit of deeper dank sort of thing, but I get more and more grassiness out of this one into the aftertaste. And just, yeah, a little bit of dankness toward on the sides of the palate toward the back too. But overall, it's a really nice beer, this one, and I have enjoyed it. Something quite different in the West Coast double IPA category. So thumbs up to a DD4D for doing something a wee bit different. And again, this is one of these beers that epitomises what I've said about Japanese beer for years. The Japanese really value drinkability in their beers regardless of the style, and this one I could see being quite popular because it has that light Japanese drinkability to it, but it's got the very full flavour profile that they enjoy as well. So yeah, a little bit of food for thought with this one too, but I think we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Diamond in the Rough, an 8% West Coast double IPA from DD4D Brewing in Matsuyama, Ehime Prefecture on the Shikoku Island. Really, really nice beer. The flavour profile of it and just the general vibe of the beer reminds me a little bit of cold IPAs. But yeah, definitely the flavour profile can be interpreted as West Coast double IPA as well. It really fits that style quite well. But I think it's the mouthfeel and the cleanliness that the beer has that gives it a wee bit of cold IPA character too. So interesting stuff, but definitely give this one a go if you get the chance. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from DD4D Brewing as well. We've got one more to review from these guys during this trip, and I'm sure on future trips to Japan I will have even more. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out DD4D's social media, and I'll catch you guys in another review very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai.